Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 192 of the Masterclass podcast. My name is Cam Brennan, and his name is Dave Hogue. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
How are you? Oh, no. Oh, man. We jinxed it. How are you? You go first.
I'm great. So, just fresh off of a weekend where my son, who has special needs, just got to experience life with quote unquote regular kids, normal kids. And that's the weird thing, even as a parent of a special kid, I never know what to call the other kids. Yeah, your kid's normal, mine's not. I don't know. Anyway, we just had a very cool weekend where he went to homecoming. He had a date. He is a freshman in special needs, and she is a junior.
Let's go, Wilby. Let's go.
On the dance team, the dance squad. I don't even know what it's called. Very cute young lady.
Kid's got some
very
pull.
cool young lady. Anyway, we had a dinner with that was hosted by a family of another child that has special needs, and there were many kids that came to that dinner, the quote unquote normal kids and the special needs kids, and it was just very cool to see them all in the house together, having conversations together, just being teenagers, and really no labels amongst themselves. The labels probably came from all the adults watching the interactions going on. And so it reminded me of the fact that there is a lot of good that comes in this world, not sometimes it seems like the whole political correctness and the changing of terms and how we approach some of that stuff gets crammed down your throat and forced on you. And I'm sure in some ways it does, but as a parent of a kid with special needs, I'm grateful that has improved and has changed. And so anyway, just on a bit of a high with our son and what he experienced this weekend, and getting to go to homecoming. And then the homecoming football game was on Friday night, and he is a manager for the team and gets to stand on the sidelines, and they actually had an overtime win.
Oh, wow.
And so it was kind of the whole place, and they'd come back from being at least 2 touchdowns down. Yeah, I think it was 2 touchdowns, and he was fully included in all of that. And so yeah, I think there's an element of every generation has areas where they're worse than the previous generation. And I think there are other areas that they improve and become better. And I think this is one of the ways that whatever your belief is about political correctness and all that kind of stuff, I just think our kids are more accepting or more sensitive to those that are different than them. And instead of trying to exclude them, they do a very good job of including them. And I will just, the caveat or the piece that I'll add to that is I have the privilege of being in the schools every day as a parent now. And I see it in the lunchroom. I see it in the hallways. I see it in gym class. I see them truly interacting with the kids with special needs, and they know their names. They know their interests, they know their pets, they know their brothers and sisters. And as a child with special needs, I'm just very grateful for that, and feel like we're on the being blessed by that aspect of things. So didn't mean to go on the diatribe, but like I said, it's just kind of where I'm at from the weekend, and we're incredibly grateful for that blessing.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing that, because it adds nuance to the conversation of inclusivity versus exclusivity, right? In the church and politics, right? And we think inclusivity is only about the LGBTQ plus, right? And rarely do we have the conversation in the church of inclusivity, including, folks with special needs, whether they're physical, or mental or whatever, right? Like there's that whole aspect of that conversation that I've yet to experience, because it's always about, well, what are your thoughts on gender identity or homosexuality or all of that whole gradient of things, right? And so for you to bring that up and say, as a parent of a young man, with special needs, that inclusivity that the church often maligns for other reasons is benefiting your kid in great ways. That now, we said before, if Wilby had been in my school when I was his age, or in your school, when you were his age, it would have been a very different experience for him than it is now. And so I think it adds incredible credence to this idea that we can't throw the entire thing out. We have to be able to engage in the conversation of what is good about this idea of including as many people as possible, and what parts don't jive with what the Bible has to say. And I think your ability to dive into that and say, this benefits my kid, is a great way for other folks to be like, oh, the whole push for inclusivity isn't 100% a bad idea. It's a good thing in most scenarios that we make people feel loved. It is just in some of the particulars that the church will disagree with culture, and we will always do that. And so I find it refreshing to hear, one, I respect you and I know you, right? But like, there's nuance and gradients here of that conversation that I think is healthy to have. And I'm just glad that you brought it up in the way that you did, so that people could hopefully hear that, like, this is not a black and white issue. There are so many ways that we can have this conversation, and so many different types of people that live with different circumstances or realities, right? It's not just a yes or no binary thing, which I realized even saying the word binary, that means something different now. Are you anyways. So I just, I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm glad that Wilby had a great time and that your team won, man, in overtime. That's epic.
It really was. It really was. So good weekend.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are, I think we're going to wrap up chapter 10 of Hebrews today. But I also think that we're going to read the passages that we covered in the last 2 episodes as well, to help set up a hopefully more thorough discussion of these last few verses. So we're going to cover chapter 10, 32 to 39, but we're going to read 19 through 39 so that it's a little more fresh in everyone's minds as we engage with the last few verses. So unless there's anything else that you want to chat about beforehand, I think the table is yours, sir.
Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the holy places by the blood of Jesus, by the new and living way that he opened for us through the curtain, that is, through his flesh, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart and full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stir upon one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day draw near. For if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. Anyone who has set aside the law of Moses dies without mercy on the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much worse punishment do you think will be deserved by the one who has trampled underfoot the Son of God and has profaned the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified and has outraged the Spirit of grace? For we know him who said, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay.' And again, the Lord will judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. But recall the former days when, after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings, sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, and sometimes being partners with those so treated. For you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward, for you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. For yet a little while, and the coming one will come and will not delay. But my righteous one shall live by faith, and if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls."
How are you feeling after that one?
Okay.
That was a lot, man. Thanks for doing that.
Yes. And hopefully I didn't butcher anything too badly.
Nothing that we can't fix in post, my friend.
Okay.
The glory of editing. All right. So we're focusing on the last part, but I do think it's beneficial to have the whole section read so that we can hear the hope and the good stuff and the fury of fire that will consume the adversary. It's like we get the whole picture here, right? And so this is what is interesting to me, right? But recall the former days when, after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings. What is so hard when you're in the middle of something is to see anything else, right?
Oh yeah.
It is like it is right in front of your face. It's all you can see, it's all you can feel, it's all you can think about whether it's good or bad, right? Like when you're in puppy love, it's all you can think about, that person is just your whole world and they're perfect and you can't see reality. Mm-hmm. And the same goes for when tragedy strikes or trauma or like when you are in the moment, good or bad, you cannot see or think or feel other things.
Right.
It's just how we are as people. And so what I appreciate about the author of Hebrews here is saying, but remember back when, the former days, after you were enlightened, and he's reminding them, you endured a hard struggle. Like you've done this before. You have been here. You have done that. You bought the t-shirt, as they say, right? Like this is not new. You have endured a hard struggle with sufferings. And it is such a wise thing to do for somebody who is going through something, good or bad, is to give them an anchor point outside of the current situation to be able to like latch onto or look towards, right? Just remember this truth. And I think it's brilliant that after he goes through the hope and the despair of the first two sections of this, but remember back in the day when you endured a hard struggle and you suffered, sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, being made fun of in public, being attacked, being, yelled at, like whatever, right? Public humiliation because of what you believe. And then sometimes being partners with those so treated. Maybe it wasn't you they're getting yelled at, but it was your best friend. It was your wife. It was your business partner. It was your mom. Like he's drawing an emotional connection to these people. Remember when. And I think that's incredibly powerful for all of us, whether, the folks that he's writing this to or us listening and reading today. Like, remember when you've been through the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't like to remember that stuff generally.
No.
But, Dave, you and I have lived enough life to realize, I think, that sometimes remembering the struggle can be invaluable in helping us through the current struggle. Whether that's issues in the marriage, issues at work, internal, emotional, spiritual, mental issues with your kids, right? Like there's something inherently valuable about learning from past struggle to help you in current struggle. I don't really have anything else to say about that. It struck me as really profound. And whether that's just, and it may not be profound to anybody else, and that's totally fine. But there's just, I don't know. As often happens, I don't see that or think that until I hear your lovely baritone read it to me. And then like, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about that before. Yeah. But maybe that was just for me. I don't know.
So, yeah, I mean, and this is one of those for me that I'm having so many thoughts. I'm not sure which one I want to go with. And I don't know, the one that's coming to my mind is almost a little too. So my son-in-law has a ministry in Haiti. And him and some other local folks went down to Texas to help the people that are on the border trying to get into this country, many of who are Haitian. And I think there's multiple reasons for why they went down there. And I think so that was one of the things that I think there was a conscious willingness to partner with people being treated a certain way. And I know that's not my tendency, and I think it's a tendency for a lot of us, is to, one, just avoid those situations. And then two, not just avoid them, but we don't really align ourselves with them, And I also, the other thing is, even as I'm saying this, there's so much in this world, so many things that need to be addressed, so many atrocities that we would go crazy if we tried to align ourselves with every bad thing that went on in this world and tried to fix it. I suppose on some level, we could probably try to pray for everything that we could possibly pray for. But you have to pick and choose, and Haiti is near and dear to my son-in-law's heart. And so he went down there. And I'm not even sure that I'm articulating this as well, but verse 34 talks about having that compassion on those in prison and accepting the plundering of your property. And so there's a lot of negatives surrounding these people on the border, and how it's been handled and why are they there and just all sorts of different stuff. And Shay went and he speaks Haitian Creole. And so he got to have some conversations with some of these people. And this whole like event is like is months in the works kind of a thing. And to really kind of try to even explain how it happened and have all these people on the doorstep of the United States is hard to explain, but the other word that stood out to me is the term "you were enlightened."
Mm-hmm.
And as much as we don't like struggle, and as much as it's like you said, when you're in the moment, it's the only thing you can focus on. I think anytime we come through these moments, whether it's a conscious decision to go and participate in something like this, or it's something that is beyond our control, there is an enlightenment that comes from having gone through struggles and sufferings that I just don't think we get without it being bad. And so, yeah, I guess that's just kind of my initial thought to this is just, you ask somebody if they want enlightenment, they're going to say yes. But then if you really think about what often has to be experienced for us to receive true enlightenment, so frequently it is not the fun stuff. So frequently it really is working through hard struggle and suffering. So not sure that made sense, but that's where my brain went.
No, it makes sense to me, right? As you said, you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of it. Like you did so at your own expense.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if anyone can understand what that feels like, it would be God. Right? He did for us while we were still his enemies. What he did for us at his own expense, at great cost, at cost that we will never understand. The plundering not of his property, but of his family, right? His son.
Right.
And this is, I love the back half of verse 34. Since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. Like, you can take my stuff all you want. It's just stuff. Not only is it not as good as what I have in God, it won't last. And God is eternal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is, I think, an incredibly powerful statement. Because, like, what did I tell you before we started recording? I'm like lusting over this camera that costs a stupid amount of money to the point, like, I can't buy it. Like, I just can't. I mean, I could, but it would be an absolutely ridiculous use of money. That would be better suited going towards bills, retirement, college fund, savings, right?
Yeah.
So technically, could I afford it? Yes. Would it be a very, very stupid way to spend my money? 1,000,000%, right? But it's me just lusting after this piece of technology, this toy, this thing that I've wanted for, a year, and it's just property. Like, it's just a thing. And for whatever reason or reasons, I really, 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 really want it. And I don't need it at all. I don't at all. I don't need it. And so having that sort of like, ooh, I want it. It's pretty. It's nice. It's sexy. It's expensive. Ooh, people will know that I'm, a professional or whatever, right? Like all the things that come with having a nice thing. It's like, it is just a property and it's not as good a possession as what God has given me, right? The thing that I have, my salvation, and it will not last. That camera will be obsolete in 5 to 6 years.
Right.
Within 2, it'll be replaced. Within 5 to 6, it will be absolutely obsolete.
Yeah.
Right? And here I am just like drooling over it. When I know for a fact all of those things that I just listed And I don't know, it's one of those things where like I get really frustrated at myself. And I'm not the only one, that has
Oh
their
yeah.
thing, right? For some people it's, season tickets. For others it's, the newest car model, or like everyone has their thing that they'll spend ridiculous or will desire to spend ridiculous money or time on,
Yeah.
right? Um and we're chasing happiness in possession, or status, or meaning, or power, or recognition, or whatever the case is, right?
Right.
But here he's saying you had compassion on those in prison at the cost of your property, since you knew that what you had literally pales in comparison to what you have in God. And that's, I think, a mindset we could all uh, afford to embrace more
Yeah.
regularly.
Yeah. And I just, with all of this, it's just that the focus on the here and the now versus the focus on the eternal,
Yep.
whether it be in the midst of struggle, whether it be, um, longing for possessions. I mean, everything that we like get almost consumed by is so temporary, so fleeting. And yet what is eternal and forever, um, it's almost kind of like, well, I'll deal with that when it gets here, or it's,
Well, there is that. Like, so one, it's the novelty idea, right? Ooh, it's
mhm,
new, which means it's sexy, right? And there's also, you said I'll get to it eventually because I know it'll still be there. Like,
mhm.
so there's no rush, there's no urgency. But like, ooh, the newest version of X, right? It's I think it exposes our childish nature, if I can use such a phrase, right? That like, even though we're adults and have our own children, we still have those urges to just, ooh, new is better, new is exciting,
Yeah.
and I
Well,
just,
and I think too, we just live at a time and in a place where it's just the things that we can lust after. It's just infinite,
well,
you know.
I think
And I think that's
there's,
true of all human nature. I don't think it's
but
unique to our time now, but
okay, yeah, that's what I was going to push back on, is like, I, I, innovation isn't new. Innovation has been around since people have been around, and there's
right.
always, the newer way to kill the animal, or the better, way to heat your home, or like there's always been, like, status has always been a thing, right? And desire
Yep.
to have new stuff like, if there was no desire to have new and better things, then we wouldn't have the things that we have now, right? Like, it's, I don't know. I I think we suffer from it in different ways because of the speed with which we can get them.
Maybe that's a better way to say it, is the speed.
But I think it's just representative of a problem that all humans have faced. We just happen to be at the spearhead, you know, right now. And then, many, many, many years after we're dead and gone, they'll be at the new spearhead of what that looks like. Um, but yeah, it's just we're chasing after satisfaction and new, not necessarily new, but faster, more efficient, more convenient ways, right? Like, that's what, like, all technological progress is just chasing convenience. All it's
Hmm.
doing.
Yeah.
Like, I've lived my entire life in air conditioning, pretty much. Except for, like, when I was intentionally outside, right? You know how many people live on this planet without the even concept of air conditioning? Billions upon
Yeah.
billions. But like, I can't go without it because I've been conditioned to want to live in a specific, temperature range.
Well, and I just even think about the way we use our phones constantly.
Uh-huh.
Like, it wasn't that long ago that you didn't have that at your disposal. And I'm like, how did we function, as working in the school? I mean, we have a group text that daily there's a change to how we're doing things. And I'm like, I mean, I guess we're coming up on 20 years now. I keep wanting to say 10 years ago, and it's like, well, no, it's probably more like 20 years ago. But anyway, just it really is crazy. And I know that's a complete tangent rabbit hole, but the things of the world do get in the way.
Well, yeah. And to that end, like I regularly have the thought, what am I teaching my daughter about how we use technology? Like when I'm using my phone around her, am I showing her the best way to use this tool, or am I teaching her to use it to escape, to use it to, self-medicate or whatever, right? Like, what is she learning from my just normal usage of my phone or my iPad or my computer about what is good and right and okay and acceptable for these sorts of things? And that's like, my parents didn't have to worry about that in the 80s and early 90s. That we had TV, and I got a Super Nintendo when I was pretty young because my grandpa spoiled me. But like there were strict rules about.
Well, and at some point the TV turned off.
Exactly.
I think you're old enough that at the end of the day they actually ended broadcasting.
I'm not that old, Dave. I'm not that old.
So,
but no, but I mean,
but
there was
not like you couldn't just stream constantly.
Oh, yeah, it was
like,
different. Yeah, like you were stuck with whatever was on, right?
Yeah.
Like your 15 channels. Like, all right,
yeah.
what
and
are we
at
gonna...
some point, even if it was going on at late,
it was infomercials or whatever. But
yeah.
But the point is like what my parents had to deal with in teaching me, what was a good use of my time, a bad use of my time, a good use of tools. It's fundamentally different than what I'm having to teach my kids, just because access is ubiquitous now. And back when I was growing up, it was very different. TVs were 3 feet deep. They were deeper than they were wide or tall, right? Now you have the whole world in your pocket. And so it's just a little more daunting, I suppose.
Yeah.
But anyways, carries on in verse 35. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward, for you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. And I love this. You have need of endurance.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's saying, remember the struggle, remember everything you've been through, remember how you've, had compassion and you gave up your stuff because you've seen the hope that you have. You know what's coming. You know what's real. Don't throw away your confidence. You have a great reward, but you need endurance because that's not the only struggle you're going to go through. You're going through it now. You're going to go through it again X number of times before you get your reward. And that is not necessarily a message that we hear preached, at least in my experience in the church, is the need for endurance. And not just the need for it, but like you need to prepare, you need to train. Like endurance is a key part of surviving life. And I just had a friend yesterday who ran the Chicago Marathon. And my alarm went off to get ready to go to church and get my kid ready. And I picked up my phone to turn my alarm off. And it's like, oh, Olivia started the Chicago Marathon 15 minutes ago. Cause like there's an app where you can track them on the map and everything. And I was like, well, great. My day's off to a really unproductive start. I just rolled out of bed and she's already started her marathon. And then like go to church, set up for Bible study, feeling pretty good about myself. come home, lay on the couch. Olivia's now on mile 13. It's like, oh my God. And so it's just a ever-present reminder of like, endurance versus comfort and intentionality and discipline and all of that sort of stuff, right? We have need of endurance, and you don't get endurance without training. And that training doesn't come easy. Like endurance by default is painful. You earn every bit of it. Like, I don't know, I'm preaching to the choir here. Like, everybody knows that. Like, you don't trip and fall into endurance. It's intentional, and it takes time.
Yes.
So it says that you have need of endurance so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. And this, reminds me of Paul saying we need to run the race to win. And then it says, for yet a little while, and the coming one will come and will not delay, but my righteous one shall live by faith. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. AKA, have endurance for a little bit. Jesus is coming back. Live by faith, be bold, don't be afraid. Stand firm in what you believe. Have hope, as he said to begin this whole section. Have confidence, draw near. All of those themes that we've seen throughout Hebrews thus far. And then the closing sentence, but we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls. Just a final, like, it's almost like he's giving like a halftime speech here. I kind of get that vibe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to encourage and pump up and motivate and just what's the word I'm looking for? Not admonish. It's another one of those fancy terms. Entice? No, that's not right. I can't think of the word, Dave. Oh well. That's a little embarrassing. That's really it's gonna hit me in like an hour. That word that I'm looking for. And
yeah.
So inconveniently missing right now. Anyways, any final thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm good.
All right. Well, that'll bring us to an end here on episode 192 of the Masterclass. Thanks so much for taking the time to hang out with us and to listen to whatever it is that we just said. We appreciate it. And show notes are going to be in your podcast app of choice. If you prefer to see them on the interwebs, you can go to supermegacorp.net/masterclass/192, and the links will be there for you to check out. So that's it for now, and until next time, Dave, farewell.
Bye.